Mom is going live now. Hello. Hey there, beautiful souls. Welcome. Hello, Jen, Alana, Patrice, Well-Tempered Claire. Thank you. Thank you for joining me tonight. I may have to adjust my camera just a little bit. There we go. And also going to check that we're clear-ish on YouTube. Yay. Wonderful. Hello, Apurva. All righty. I am good to go. So welcome everybody, and thank you again. Thanks for coming tonight to this chat, this sharing about how I choose tarot decks. And so I want to thank Sunny, who is a sub and also one of the students in my Read With Me tarot class. And Sunny asked if I had ever done a video like this. And I'm not sure if this was her question or if her question was more around purchasing decks. How do I choose to purchase a tarot deck? And I may touch on that question as well tonight. But tonight, hello, Michelle, I am going to talk about how I actually reach over here and choose a deck to read with. And in general, that kind of question, how I choose a deck, how in the world do I match a deck with a particular reading? And I really invite you to join in the chat as well, because it's such an interesting process. And I know a lot of you read cards as well too. And just to kind of share that information is, yeah, I would like to do that. I would like to do that. So if you have, anything that any input you would like to throw in the mix as well too, it's good to, because sometimes we perceive decks in different ways. Don't you feel that? Like I work with a deck for one reason, but you see the energy of that deck in a different way. And I want to know how you perceive things differently than I do. I think Amber's underneath my feet. Maybe not. So hi to everybody who's just coming in. Oh, good, Sunny. So Sunny Rivero, who is in the chat now, is the one who instigated this particular topic. So I'm glad you're here, Sunny. And I'm going to close. Well, actually, I'll just do this. There we go. And I actually did a little search on YouTube and a couple of other places, and there's not a lot of videos on this topic. I know that Katie Flower has done one, and there's a couple of videos that sort of touch on it, but not really. And I talk about it a lot, how I'm choosing decks and how I pick one up and then I put it back, but I haven't actually done a video. So this is where we're going to go and what we're going to talk about. All right. So what did you say? I literally just waved to you, forgetting that only, yes. Isn't that funny? Sometimes I do that too. Literally waving at somebody and forgetting they can't actually see you. Okay. So let's just start. I have a whole list of things over here that may direct my conversation. May not. I would say 90% of the readings that I do involve relationship. They involve love. Everybody wants to know about love. And just because it's a love reading, just because it's a relationship reading, doesn't mean it's always going to be the same deck. It really depends on the nature of the question. It depends on what I am intuiting from the way that the question is being worded. Hello, my voice tarot. And I have to tell you that with a love reading or with a relationship reading, there's different ways that I might go about it. And I can think of lots of different situations. So for example, I was doing a reading for a young man who was not, who was gay, but not openly gay, and was interested in connecting with somebody. And So at some point during the reading, they shared with me that they were gay, but they weren't openly gay. And this was, I could tell that they wanted to talk about it, but they needed somebody to talk about it. So I wanted to select a deck that had pictures that would help them to elicit that information. And so I wanted to make sure that I chose a deck that had people in relationship, in same-sex relationships. And so that was easy for them to go there, easy or easier for them to perhaps pause and ask questions. And so that particular deck that I might pick up, and one of my favorites in that regard is the Numinous Tarot. I find the Numinous Tarot is probably one of the first decks that I will pick up if I have trans or gay clients, or a member of the, let's just use the term queer. And this deck is so friendly, and it's so open, and it's so easy to work with and read. And so this is a deck that, and I don't always, it's not necessarily a queer client or a queer querent that I'm going to pick up this deck for. This deck has a lot of other amazing connections as well too. And I feel it's spiritual energy. There is an extra card in this deck. I don't know how many of you have this one, the Numinous. And there's this connection to spirit in this deck that has a very particular essence. And the other reason I might pick up this deck is if the person across the table is a book nerd, because the Suit of Pentacles is all about books. It's called the Suit of Tomes, and it's an absolutely beautiful suit in this deck. I think it's probably my favorite suit. This is the Nine of Tomes. And oh my goodness, I love the one with the sharing library. It's just such a great card. If you know the deck, you know the card I'm talking about. And this deck is not, I don't really like that term, body beautiful. There's so many different shapes, sizes, ages. It is such a diverse deck. I'll see if I can find that card. This is another really interesting card, and I recently shared Cedar's Oracle deck as well too, and to pair these two decks together. So this is an incredible deck for a bunch of different reasons, and so that's why I might pick this up. So this is the card that I was talking about with the sharing library. Yeah, so I feel this deck it's got a lot of goods. There's a lot of things to work with in this deck. And this card here. So I want to address this card. Now, I'm older, granted. Some people might call me old. And when I saw this card, and I know a few people have commented, I think Kelly Bear was one of them, that they didn't understand this card. They didn't understand the nuances of this card, or appreciate the nuances of this card. And here we have an older woman on a runway in a kind of a weird outfit. And you know what this card reminds me of? It reminds me of, I think it's called the Red Hat Club. Do you know what the Red Hat Club is? I've seen Red Hat Club members from afar going to a gathering. And I believe the foundation of the Red Hat Club is to shine in your senior years, to wear whatever you want to wear, to dress however you want to wear. And if you want to wear purple stockings and a red hat, you wear a red hat. And it's about there's a couple of amazing Facebook groups actually. to shine and to just be yourself and embrace exactly who you want to be, your authenticity in your senior years. And so that's what I see this Seven of Wands as. It's like, yeah, look at me. Look at me. Look at how awesome I am. You know, like I've got this runway. This runway is mine right now in this moment. So yeah, so that's what that card reminds me of. There's so many reasons why I might pick up a particular deck. Hello, IT guy. Joseph, welcome. Antoinette and Janine. Authentic at any age. Yes. And the thing is, you know, Claire, I find that is a challenge for people through their whole life. And it saddens me, but it's a reality that sometimes it takes people 60 years to find their authenticity. And we struggle with it, you know, on a day-to-day basis. So love relationships, I want to go back to that. So when I get a love reading, I want a deck that I feel, that makes me feel, a deck that speaks to relationship, and a deck that gives you permission to talk about feelings, whatever those feelings might be, because the tarot has so many, many feelings, right? Doesn't it? And one of the decks that I love to work with for a relationship reading is the Tarot of the Hidden Realm. I feel so much with this deck in every single card, whether the card is a cup card or it's not a cup card. I just feel, I don't know, like how cannot you feel looking at these cards? I absolutely love this deck. And I know it is not diverse, that all the fairies are white. They're pretty much all body beautiful. And that is, yes, it's a huge, huge drawback. But there is so much emotion in this deck. It's so very, very evocative, and there's no hiding of feelings. It's just crazy beautiful, this deck. So this is a deck that really, really inspires deep conversation in relationship readings. Another direction I might go in a relationship reading is an artsy deck. And this is the Lonely Dreamer Tarot, which is available on Kickstarter again. It's a slightly different version, but you can get this deck. It is available on Kickstarter now. It has, some of the cards have been reworked, and there's a couple of new cards. Why would I go to an art deck for a romantic reading? I think it's pretty obvious, but there's something about the paintings. There's something about the archetype of the artist that is romantic. There's something about paintings that are just vulnerable, and they invite conversation about relationship and love. So this is, if this deck were not on my little rack there, another one that comes to mind is the beautiful Rebellion Tarot, which is also coming out again, I believe, if not already. Yeah. So that, you know, there's quite a few different ways I might approach a relationship reading. Excuse me, depending on the nature of the question too, the wording of the question. And while you're here and while I have you all captive, I want to apologize for last Tuesday. Some of you said your readings were amazing. And it was funny because the screen was not clear at all. And it was, I said a few times that I wasn't feeling myself and probably should have arrived and then said something to the effect of, in everybody's best interest, I need to leave now. And thank you for being here. And I'll be back next Tuesday. Because whatever was going on in the universe, I was highly, highly affected by it. And I'm feeling much better. I'm feeling much, much better. But I want to, for any of you that felt that your readings were not what they could have been, I just want to apologize. This deck is, I still think this is my favorite deck of all time. Rarely does it wasn't on my shelf tonight. I haven't had it out for a little bit. But rarely does this deck go away because I love it. I love the art. I love the watercolors. I like that it doesn't give too much information, but I can draw the answers from the artwork. Somebody said, do I have Tarot of the Vampires? I do not. Yes, everybody says the book is amazing. And the book is called Phantasmagoria. And I may eventually one day just buy it for the book because people can't say enough about the book. So this is a Lily White Tarot, which is, I believe, available now as a mini deck. The other thing I love about this deck is the subtleties of messages that I can draw from the details. The way that things are moving. I also love that we have all of the incense in the suit of air. So we have this really interesting combination of air and ether. Air and ether in the suit of swords. And so what that does for me and why this works for a love reading is that love relationships are often really challenging. And when sword cards come up in a relationship reading, I don't always go to the element of air because being a yogi, being a yoga instructor, I go to my chakra associations, and the element of air is connected to the heart. The medicine of the heart is unconditional love. And so sometimes I weave the element of air actually into the medicine of the heart chakra. And especially when that Three of Swords comes up in a relationship reading, it's so easy for me. And to have the ether, the smoke in the suit of swords in this deck is really quite something. Yeah. And the pentacles, there's just so many beautiful things about this deck. There's only one card I really don't like. And I have read the guidebook in French. And I don't like the double card in this deck. And this is a passionate embrace. There is a man and a woman, or a devil and a woman. And I see something completely different in this picture, and it upsets me every time. It's the only card that I don't like. It's a fairly body beautiful deck. It's a very white deck. But you can get around that by using the Lily Black Tarot, because the Lily Black Tarot is all of the skin color on all of the people is a dark color. So yeah, so those are kind of some of my thoughts on relationship readings and love readings. If you have questions for me, can you put them into caps, please? Oh, Alana, you backed the second edition of Lonely Dreamer. The vampire deck has the huge eyes. Yeah, I guess I'm eventually going to have to get that deck, but I'm really on a no deck purchase right now. You may have heard me say I have a bunch of decks that aren't in my possession, that are in a mailbox just across the US border. And so whenever I can get there, I'm going to have a huge party. And I'm not going to be buying any decks in the near future. There's so many decks that I haven't worked well that I really, really want to spend time working with. Hello, Shadow's Truth. All right, so let's go on from there. On the other end of the spectrum, there's not a lot of people that ask about their journey, their spiritual journey, their path. You know, there's a few people, but not many ask about that kind of experience. And being the kind of person that I am, I love those kinds of questions. And when people ask those kinds of questions, I know they're connected. And I could pick up the Tarot of the Hidden Realm for sure. I could pick up any of the decks that I've already shown you. But I want to pick up a deck that feels somehow there is an essence of magic and it feels deeply connected to divine energy. There's a few that I have that I work with personally, like the Margaret Peterson Tarot. I rarely have Ember and Aura on my rack, or the one, I had it out for a long period of time, Carmen Sorrento's deck. I'm drawing a blank on that one. So if I have that kind of a spiritual question, there's a few different directions I might go, but this is a fairly new deck. This is the Star Seekers Tarot. And in the images in this deck, I feel there's an understanding of the essence of spirit. And I love that we kind of see spirit in every single card. There's a lot of floating above in the clouds in this deck. You know, radiation of light energy. And yeah, so a deck that I feel that way, I could have pulled out hundreds of decks tonight, but I really wanted to work with what was going on here. So I feel this is the Star Seeker deck is for Star Seekers. It's for those people that are really building question. Like this is an absolutely gorgeous Seven of Pentacles. I believe that's a Seven of Pentacles. Yes. You know, like that connection. Somebody who understands, somebody who feels deeply what it means and how, you know, pulling something out of the earth affects everything around it. Somebody who's deeply connected to energy. This is probably my favorite card in the whole deck. I'm a sucker for spider webs. Just love spider webs. And I've told you, I finally came to terms with the whole cobweb thing. I walk in the forest with Amber a lot. Amber's my dog, for those of you that don't know Amber. And invariably I'm the first one that's on the trail. And so it's, you know, I'm clearing cobwebs for the whole way. And it used to drive me crazy. Why me? Why couldn't somebody else break trail? But now I just feel it as connection. It's just a reminder of my connection to the animals, my connection to the trees. It's like these magical ley lines or something that I can see or feel with my skin and my body. Yeah. Okay. What else would I choose? Okay. So if somebody, this is a little different. So if somebody, I can tell they want to do the work, you know, like they're ready to do the work. There's no faking it in their question. They're not trying to slough off their question to a third party. They're not asking about other people. They're just really in it, you know, like they're really in their stuff and they want to get to the bottom of this, and I can tell and I can feel through their question or their voice, or if they're in person, their tears probably. They want to understand. And so I want a deck that is not going to hide anything. I want a deck that is going to reveal the maximum possible. And if I kept Margaret Peterson on my little rack here, I would use that deck for sure. But this is the deck that I use for that, in response to that. Okay, you want to do some big work? Let's pull out Tarot of the She, because Tarot of the She is going to get you exactly where you need to go every single time. And I get there through not only the amazing phrases that are on the bottom, because every card has a little keyword or a key phrase on the bottom, but through the artwork, through the vivid colors, through connection of colors. There's just something astounding. This is an astounding deck, and I love working with this deck. And one of the reasons I love working with this deck is because when I work with this deck, I'm working with people who are serious about, moving forward on their path. This is not a tiptoey kind of deck. And I would really make sure that the person on the other side of the table or the other side of the camera wanted to hear the answer to the question. Like, do you ever say that as a reader when somebody asks a question? Well, do you really want to know the answer to that question, or would you like to word it in a different way? Joseph commented that he's never seen so many spiders and cobwebs as this year. And do you have any thoughts on that? Because I have some thoughts on that. Hey there, Ange. I'm going to show you a couple more cards. Oh, this is such a great Dreamer 9. 9 of Swords. And you know what else I love about this deck is all of the eclipses, and the use of the sun and the moon is just incredible. So the cobweb thing, I think, because there's less pollution, because there's less, the environment is restoring itself. So a lot of the flora as well too, and the fauna are, there's a resurgence of life and of energy. So it's amazing. It is truly, truly amazing. Oh, I know what I was going to say. So I was talking about before, well, either category. So I would pull out Bonestone. I would not use Bonestone for somebody who wasn't really digging moderately deep. I feel Bonestone is it's very connected. And so again, this is not a deck to tiptoe around. You're going to get some deep messages with this deck. And Joseph says he thinks it's because of the weird temps here in LA. Okay. All right. So Michelle mentioned, if you haven't seen this card, just have a look at this one. This is a amazing card. Michelle mentioned the Oracle of Echoes. And again, if I was afraid, when am I ever afraid? If I was concerned that the person receiving the reading was a little too raw that what they were actually talking about was a little too close in time, that they were very early on in their grief, or whatever the reason they've come for a reading for was just, a little too raw. I would not use the Oracle of Echoes, because the Oracle of Echoes is another deck that does not mess around. And if you are looking for a non-fluffy Oracle deck, this is one that I would highly, highly recommend, and I cannot wait. So one of the few tarot decks that I will be buying is the Tarot of Echoes. Yeah, this is pretty potent Oracle deck. All right, so yeah, put your either tag me, or because I have the I have both windows open here, and I'm going to turn off the banner. So I will be if you haven't entered the draw, you need to go to the video that's linked below. And on Samhain, I will be doing live readings. And at the beginning or the end, or I'm not sure when, maybe in the middle, I will do the draw for the 2 decks, as well as I'm giving away a Wheel of the Year reading, which can be in person, or we can do it by email. So yeah, so I'll be drawing those on Saturday during my Samhain. Your Samhain might be a different day, but Saturday, my Saturday, I guess everybody's Saturday, my Saturday, 4 p.m. And there's already a thumbnail up on my channel. Michelle says, no, that's not the one I wanted to look, this one. This would depend on the nature of the question and the reason for the question. And the kind of question that comes to mind is that there is a pain so deep with mother, the relationship with mother. And perhaps mother is near end of life, or the conversation with the querent comes up about a deep ache and irreconcilable difference that cannot be healed with mother or father, or whatever the situation is. And that's kind of my signal that this pattern is so deep and it's so old, it is beyond the scope of this lifetime. And so then I will start to pull out my bag of tricks for healing in different directions of time, so that we can look beyond the story of this lifetime and start to heal this wound from a different perspective. And so in that case, I might go to, I might go to a more yogic deck, because that is easier for me to work with. Or I might go to one of the decks that I use for past life readings, Oracle or otherwise, Oracle or Tarot. And so the Marielle is very, very good for that. I don't have the Marielle over here right now. And I will be pulling out a lot of these decks on Saturday. And another one that I think works really well with this is the Enchanted Tarot. It's one of my favorite decks. I feel there's a timelessness, and also getting lost in the tapestry of those cards is really something. And I have a collection of Oracle decks that I pretty much exclusively use for that kind of healing work. The other deck that I would strongly recommend is the Vision Quest Tarot. And if you are feeling that kind of shamanic pulse and you feel connected to the energy of that kind of work, the shamanic style decks can really help with ancestral wounds. There's a deep medicine in there. I can hear the drum right now, just pulsing, and beautiful. It's just a beautiful healing style. So So those are a few of my thoughts on that. Oh, that was Claire that asked that. Glasses on, glasses off. Alrighty. Okay, so where do I want to go? Okay, so what about if people walk in and it's like, I want to try this. I've never done this before. Or sometimes if I'm at the store and the door is open and people see me doing readings, they're curious, and I'm not going to pull out the Everyday Witch Oracle. What am I going to pull out? What am I going to pull out so they feel, oh, this is kind of cool. This is interesting, and I'll tell you about a party that I did. This was this strange, and this was during COVID, and it was in the summer, it was warm. And I went, and there was two couples in their 20s, maybe 30 years old, a husband. So 2 men, 2 women, and they had been drinking and were continued to be drinking while I was doing the readings. I did 4 readings, like about 15 minutes a person. I was there for just over an hour. And it was really fun. But I knew, especially with the guys, their wives had got them to participate with this and had them sufficiently lubricated, that I was going to have to hit the nail on the head. And I was going to do one of the guys first and kind of just set the tone for what was possible. And it was really fun. And I just had so much fun. So the deck, one of my go-to decks for this kind of thing is, I did bring it out tonight, this one. Stephen Bright's deck. Yeah. I think this is a very clever deck, and it's so easy to read. We used this in the class the other day. And I hadn't, it's not a deck that's out all the time, but it just kind of hits the mark for that kind of situation. And I just thought about this. For those of you that listen to me regularly, you know how I love the Knight, or is it the King of Wands in this deck? I think there's maybe not. Maybe not. I was going to say there's a relatability about the slow tarot, like the lacrosse team on the beach. I think for certain people, but overall, it's not a deck that I would choose for that reason. But I was thinking about, this card, it is the Knight, it's not the King, right? The King is the guy with the blue mask. I don't know. I think there's a certain relatability. I like some of the characters in the slow tarot. All right, let's go back. What wouldn't I pull out? I said I wouldn't pull out a witchy deck. I probably wouldn't pull out a Rider-Waite-Smith deck. I would choose the Way Home for sure. For sure, I would use the Way Home. So I trimmed my Way Home the other day because I edged it in this putrid color and couldn't stand it. And this is a very challenging deck to cut because there's a lot of the borders are all white on white. So I may, can't see that. That's the sun. I can show you some darker cards. There's definitely a relatability to this deck. And so this is one that I I would most definitely pull out with somebody who wasn't familiar with the tarot. Yeah. We're not talking about trimming decks today, but I'll show you how bad my job is. And I've trimmed a lot of decks. I just do it with scissors. But yeah, so I do not recommend trimming this one unless you've got unless you have a really, really good guillotine, which is still on my wish list. Okay. One of you, maybe it was Jen, you had this deck out the other day, and there was a very particular reason why you pulled out this deck. And one of the reasons, there's actually two reasons why I would pull out an Alice Tarot, or perhaps I would pull out, I only have the Spanish version of the Fairy Tale Tarot, or another deck that elicits, that's based on a story. And that's because I find this deck very cerebral. I love the intellectual aspect of the wordplay and the whole adventure in... No, I like the intellectual wordplay in the two Alice stories. And if I had a querent who was who was cerebral, I think this is a really good deck. You know, most people who have, because you can play with the words, you can play with the metaphor, you can play with the language, you can play with the different layers and levels of the Alice story. And it's a great story for revealing the truth. If you are interested in the Alice Tarot, I did 2 videos on this particular deck. I broke down the deck into the 2 stories. So the first video is on Alice in Wonderland, and the second video is on Through the Looking Glass. And that's actually, I find that story is more to what I was saying. It might be that, you know, if there ever was an Alice Tarot that was just Through the Looking Glass, but it works. And I also have the Bubba Studios one. So either one. I just happened to grab this one. Yeah. This is Dame Darcy Alice. I don't know if the chat is frozen or you guys are just... Oh, there is a question there. Okay. How many decks did you bring to the party? Are you talking to me? I guess you are. How many decks did I bring to the party? Well, my rack is full. And then I have 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So I don't know. I can turn my camera so you can see my rack. Maybe I can. I don't know if I can. It's kind of stiff. Can I turn it? Oh, sort of, kind of. So on the rack on each row, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I can have 21 decks on this rack. And then I have a bunch on the table underneath. So that's about what I brought to the party. Oh yeah, I have a bunch of tarots in a tin. I tend to pull those out when I'm putting tarot into it, like a suitcase for traveling. I think they're really, really good for that. I don't use them a lot. I have White Sage, Morgan Greer, Centennial, Halloween, Vanessa. Vanessa's a fun little deck. I wouldn't use that in a reading, but I like that. I'm a fan, right? So I was born in the 60s. So I am a fan of that kind of bewitched flavor, and I feel that vibe. Named one of my children after Samantha Stevens. That's how much I love that. Okay. Oh, that party. Okay. I do not have the Alice Tarot in a tin, no. Okay, so that party with those two couples. I have a basket, which isn't here. I'm sure I've shown you my basket before. So it's like this big, it's got handles, and it's doing 4 readings. And so I took, I believe, 6 tarot decks and 2 oracle decks. And I guess this is another question. So how do I know? I didn't know what I was walking into. I didn't know if I was walking into a girls' weekend. I didn't know if I was what I was walking into. I had no idea. And so I just trusted. I took a variety of decks that would cover all bases. And I used a different deck for each person. And that was a really good strategy. And just somehow I just chose the perfect one for each person. And generally when if I'm going to the shop, I'll do the same thing. I take time to pack my basket, but I don't overthink it. And sometimes there will be seasonal influences, and sometimes I will know who I'm reading for, but for the most part, I have no idea who I'm reading for. And it's a crapshoot, but I don't believe anything is a crapshoot. I believe that I'm guided, all the time. It's really nice. It's really nice to be in that place of trust. I have a few more. Do you want to kind of see what other questions I wrote down here? I was thinking about career readings. So right now, the deck that I seem to pull every single time, and I haven't taken it off my rack since I got it, is the 5 cent. And I have found this deck to read so well for career readings. And I don't know what it is about this deck. Jonathan, who I don't think he's here tonight, said the other day, because I was saying, I don't really have any go-to animal decks. And he said, well, isn't this an animal deck? And I don't really think of this as an animal deck. Somehow this has become my career reading deck, and I kind of get lost in a different aspect of this deck other than the animals. I don't read this as an animal deck. Not once in any reading have I actually really gone, ooh, okay, well, what's the medicine of that animal? It's kind of doing something very different for me. And I was a little concerned about the volume of keywords on these cards, but they're really good. They're really good. And the button thing doesn't bother me. Like the pentacles are buttons. It's a very, very quirky deck. It's a very quirky deck. Matches for fire. Yeah. And you know what I haven't done with this deck? It's like I took it out of the box and I shuffled it and I started using it. And it just felt like I just kicked the can and away I went. It was not a deck that I, I think some decks I've done that and I've ruined them by overanalyzing them. And one of those is the Hush Tarot. I was looking at every single card like, what is that? What's going on here? And analyzing, over intellectualizing every single card. And Jeremy Hush does not explain that in that little book, but there's these crazy messages that I was getting out of the Hush Tarot, and I think I ruined it because it's quite a beautiful deck. But I kind of spoiled it for myself. So yeah. Yeah, I can do that sometimes. Get too over analytical. Anyway, there we go. Wild unknown. Okay, so let me tell you about the wild unknown and why I would pull out the wild unknown. I would pull out the wild unknown for the same reason I would pull out Tarot of the She. I have wild unknown here. I have the mass market version. I did not get on the wild unknown train in 2012. And if anybody has a 2012 wild unknown, I would be interested in it. Because this deck is a little confusing for people if they're looking at the cards. And it's an amazing reader for reading challenging issues. And I love the layers in this deck very, very much. I have no problem reading this deck, whether we've got worms and eyeballs. Stunning, stunning Ace of Wands. So yeah, so this deck, I really enjoy this deck. It fascinates me. It really fascinates me. And so why would I choose this deck? I wouldn't choose this deck for anybody. Or any reading. I would choose this deck very much like Tarot of the She. So somebody that wanted to dive a little bit deeper. Right? So if somebody wants fluff, right? They just want a fluffy, fun reading. That's hard for me. That's so hard. So what do you choose if you just want a fluffy reading? Right? And that doesn't mean necessarily you want a hug, but you just want something fun. And so suppose I was to go to a girls' night, or I was going to a party where I knew like the intention was just fun. It would depend on the demographic, of course, but I would choose, and I don't have a lot of them, but I would choose decks that are more quirky for sure. Yeah, quirky. And there's a fun quirkiness to the Everyday Witch, and I have this out now because of the season. It's not a deck that I have out very often. I love the Harry Potter cards. You know, this is like the Remembrall, the scene with the Remembrall. Yeah, and I like this deck. Like, I totally get this deck. I relate to it, you know, and I'm really glad that I have the Oracle, which balances out the lack of diversity in the tarot. You know, and I want to be her. I want a tree just like that. Sit there with my bottle of wine and have my cats licking my feet. Love this Ace of Swords. It's fun. I love this deck, but it's either I either embrace it for its quirkiness, or I read with somebody who gets the witchy energy. Yeah. What is your favorite quirky deck? Like if you were going to a party and, you know, people were drinking, or it was just a fun thing, like which tarot deck do you associate with that? What tarot deck comes to mind? I would like to know. Oh, the Vanessa. Yes, 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 the Vanessa. And the Housewives Tarot too. I was going to mention that. The, oh, I don't know Food Fortunes Tarot. I'll have to look that one up. That's so funny. Kakashi. I know a very good spiritual technique where you have to drink juggernog. That is so funny. I think people are used to seeing RWS decks in movies, like when the devil or death or the lovers are pulled out, everybody recognizes it. Would you not have a regular original RWS? Yes, I would probably have my professional. So do you know the professional size ones that are like, they're like, well, I was going to say they're like this big. Maybe they're like this big. They're different shape though. So the professional, do you know the professional ones? They're like this high. And so sometimes that is a really good, so if you have either the Tarot de Marseille or the RWS, and you have those at a party, and then you can just do single card readings, and you have these huge cards, and people think it's really cool. So for sure, for sure. So a Centennial is a great deck to have, or whatever your favorite version is, universal, and maybe the hippie ones, right? If it was the right demographic, like I love the Groovy Weight. I think it's hilarious. And there's so many cool characters. You know what I'm talking about? The Groovy Weight. I did a video a while back with the Trippin' Weight and the Groovy Weight, and I prefer the Groovy Weight to the Trippin' Weight. So those are fun decks. Everyday enchantment. Oh yeah, that's a good suggestion. That's a good suggestion. Well, okay, so Alana, so these ones are this big, and the professional is even longer. So yeah, so it's right, and you also have 78 of them. There's not 78 in this deck. So it's a lot like this. Yeah. Okay. All right, a few more questions. Another reason why I would choose a deck would be for the season. So that might be for Halloween, I would have out the Halloween Tarot. For Halloween, I have out the Halloween Oracle. I like this deck. Do you know what my favorite deck is to pull out for spring? Some of you might know. And I only pull it out like at that beginning of that. It has a short, I have it out for like 6-7 weeks. The Quirky Tarot of the Witches by Fergus Hall. That's another one I'll have to look up. I like the Victorian Fairy Tarot. It screams spring to me. And it's a funny little deck, right? It's very Victorian, and the summer season in that deck, it reminds me so much of my childhood. I love it. And so it either reminds me of summer or spring, but I usually pull that deck out in the spring. So sometimes a reason I will reach for a deck, or I will put certain decks on my rack, is because of the season. And that's a reality, because it feels energetically like that's what I need to work with. And I work a lot with moon energy, and I don't particularly associate any of my decks with moon energy. I rarely use the Deviant Moon. I have it in my collection. I hardly use it at all. I might pull it out for, I'm not going to give it away because I think it has a place. It's not one of my favorite decks, but I don't have a lot of decks with moon in the name that I associate with moon. But I do I feel if I really need to tap into lunar energy, I'm going to take one of my decks that have a lot of watercolor on it or have strong, strong feminine energy. So one of them is perhaps the Muse Tarot, which has strong feminine energy. It also has a fiery quality to it also has a fiery quality to it as well too. So yeah, working with the seasons. And Claire uses the wild unknown to connect with the moon cycles. Okay. And then the next one here is decks for timings. And this is not something I do a lot of. I do not do a lot of predictive reading, but people often ask, how long is that away? Now, one of the things I used to do was I haven't done one for a long time. It's like 3x9 spread, so like 27 cards. And so the line in the center is the present, and then we have the near future. Is it called the Romani spread? I used to do those all the time, and I would rely on the spread to do the timing as opposed to the deck to do the timing. If I have the Victorian fairy on my rack, I use that for timings because it's obviously built into the pictures and it's easy to read. Presently, the Wildwood is my go-to. And I use the Wildwood for timings because not only is every major card associated with a time of year, but also every minor card is also associated with a time of year. And so we have, within the wheel of the year, there's 4 major cards associated with the subconscious. And then there are, so if you think of a wheel, there's 4 in the center, and then we kind of branch out, and then there's a few more in the middle wheel, and then a few more in the outer wheel. And each of the sabbats has 3 major cards that you can associate with. And then there are the minors are connected between each of the sabbats. So there's about a 1/4 of the year that's connected to each of the minor suits, give or take. And it's a great deck to use if you get to know its system. It's a really good deck to use for timings because you can get very, very specific and say, okay, May 21st, in theory. That's how detailed the system is in this deck. This one is trimmed. This is a great card. And it's taught me a lot as well, too. I feel looking at the relationship between the particular majors that are associated with certain times of year. Now, a while back, I was sharing with you Corinne Kenner's book. Corinne is she's written a lot of tarot books, but in her book associated with the After Tarot, she has a tremendous detail with timings, and it's fascinating. You can also, of course, use astrological associations. And so a lot of people do that as well, too. And so if a particular card is associated with a particular astrological sign, then you can use that for timings as well, too. And I don't think any of the decks are heavy in astrological symbols that I have on my rack right now. Okay. Next question is, how long do decks stay on my rack? I think that depends. Depends what I'm teaching. It depends who I'm reading for. So I change my decks all the time. I'm always going in and out of my cabinet and changing my decks. How many decks do I pack into my basket when I'm traveling? I would take a minimum of 4 tarot and 2 oracles, sometimes more. And if I'm going away for the day, like I'm just going to the city, even if I'm just going away, I always take at least 1 deck with me. And if I know I'm going to get stuck in ferry traffic, I'm going to take a deck that has a book that I want to read. I love doing that when I'm waiting for the ferries. And then the other question somebody asked was, how do I choose decks for purchase? So how do I know what my next deck is that I'm going to buy? And this is kind of a good question. And I think, well, this is a good way to end tonight. The Moon Oracle. I have I'm not sure which Moon Oracle you're talking about. The Moon Oracle that I purchased is the one that is the Moon Oracle of the She, and I have not even read the PDF yet. So I'm not using it. I do have, a great deck for timings in that regard is Patrick Fogarty's deck. So I really like Patrick's deck. That is called, somebody tell me what it's called. That's a beautiful deck for doing astrological or moon readings. I don't tend to do astrological readings because I'm not an astrologer, but I do use that deck for moon readings for sure. And it's gorgeous. Gorgeous, gorgeous deck. Patrick Fogarty. I can't remember what the deck is called. It's an astrological deck. There's a few moon oracles out there. So perhaps if you write down the creator, but I don't have it. I don't have Moonology, and I don't have any decks that are called Moon Oracle. I don't know why. I just haven't purchased them. So the question was, what am I going to buy next? And how do I decide what I'm going to buy now that I have, I don't know, close to 200 tarot decks in my collection? Okay, that's, Living Wheel. Yes, yes, yes. So this is the astrological deck that's so beautiful. So beautiful. Thank you. And Alana, thank you. You said that as well too. Carolyn Smith and John Astrup. Okay, I will be sure to look that up. Well, sometimes I peruse Kickstarter. I am a member of several of the Facebook tarot groups, and so I see decks there all the time. And I just feel that I'm getting more and more discerning. I know if there's a hole, like if I see a deck and I go, oh, that really fills a hole that I don't have. Or perhaps a deck creator whose deck that I love creates an oracle deck or creates a tarot deck, then that might be a reason for me to purchase it. Or if I am an absolute fan of somebody's artwork. So when I learned, Anna Christina Turian so first of all, the Abyss Tarot will come out sometime next year, probably with US Games. It is a black and white deck, and it's going to pair incredibly beautifully with with Oracle of Echoes, but also it'll look great. Sacred Rebels. Sacred Rebels is one that it's going to look amazing with, and I probably will purchase that one. So that's a mass market deck. And then she has she's going to self-publish Tarot of Echoes. And because I'm a fan of her artwork, I will definitely purchase Tarot of Echoes. There's no question there. I'm going to purchase a piece of art as well too, because it's incredibly beautiful. And then, where are the holes in my collection? Where are the holes? I don't know. I don't feel I have any holes right now. And if I saw a deck that I kind of went, ooh, okay, that's really, really intriguing, or it helped to clarify something through the Tarot of Marseille that I didn't understand, or it complemented another deck in a way that was so obvious that another deck had to work together with another deck, I might purchase one. There there's just really not a need. And I would say in the past 4 months, there's a few decks that I have purchased because there's so much raw about them, and then have so regretted purchasing them. So regretted. So there's a few here. Astro Soul is on Alana's list. Moon Mansions. Moon Mansions. Yeah. And there's a few fun, quirky decks. Like, I almost thought that I might get the Friends tarot because I'm a fan of the TV show Friends, but I didn't. If there was another release of a Harry Potter tarot, maybe, but would I use it? Probably not. Probably not. And so what I may purchase is I may purchase a second copy of the Way Home Tarot because I hate the way that I botched it up. And if I damaged a deck that I use all the time, I might purchase a backup copy. I do have 2 copies of a few decks, not too many. I have 2 copies of Tarot of the Hidden Realm. One because my daughter has it all the time. And I have a couple of copies of a few others, but not too many. Not too many. So yeah. So that's it. Unless you guys have any other questions, I'd be happy to answer. And Sunny, I don't know if you're still here. Have I fully answered your question? Is there anything else? Any other burning questions? I did not order Ash Oakenthorn. It was so expensive to ship from the UK. And I had it in a, I went through the process of filling in my information, and then I looked at the cost with the shipping and the currency exchange, and I decided not to buy it. So I am waiting to see if it has some longevity and how people feel about it 3 months from now. If people are still raving about it, if it feels like a deck that people are really using. I don't tend to use a lot of animal decks, as I mentioned, and I know it's just not an animal only deck, deeply connected to nature. There's one deck that I purchased that is so new, it still smells new. It's the Enchanted Forest one. I kind of regret buying that. I didn't need it. It's cute. It's pretty. It's got some amazing cards, but I didn't need it. And so there's a few that I just want to be a lot more cautious these days in what I'm purchasing. Ha 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 ha. Okay. Well, good question, Sunny. Good question. I would say that you have your basic deck, whatever it is. For me, it was the Robin Wood. And usually this is in a bag, but I've put it in a box recently. I feel deeply connected to this deck because it was the first I spent, oh my goodness, I probably read exclusively with this deck for, I was going to say 3 years, maybe longer. Like, this was my deck. And so you have your first deck. maybe your first and your second deck. My second deck was the Osho Zen, which I will always have fondly. And I read with that for years. I actually have diaries, plural, of just Osho Zen readings and notes from me and from other people. So what I would suggest is that you have a few basic questions. Some of them I've shared with you tonight. So one of them is, I think to have a deck that is comfortable for a wide range of people. I think to have a deck or two that have tremendous diversity. I think that this deck here could be in everybody's, should be, is that too hard of a word? Should be in everybody's collection. This is one of the most diverse, easy to read decks. It is a range, of everything. Like it touches on all aspects of diversity. And the thing I like about this one, as opposed to Poppy Palin's deck is too busy, and it's too specific to the scene, to the situation. I love Everyday Enchantment Tarot, but I feel that this one, so this is, This Might Hurt. It's an indie deck. It's kind of expensive, but you would never regret having this. And it would be, because it's contemporary, and it's easier on the eye for a lot of people who don't like to look at the RWS. And there's absolutely no problem in reading it. There's such great representation of color. There's no tokenism in this deck, in my opinion. If you see tokenism in this deck, let me know. It does a really good job. And it has cool guys on motorcycles, which is a joke on my channel. If you don't know what that joke is. So a diverse deck, a deck that is consciously diverse. Then, if you are going to expand your awareness with the elements and to really start to understand the energy of fire and water and earth and air, you want to find a deck that you really feel the energy of the elements. And some decks hit the elements a little better than others, Not everybody relates to the Wild Unknown Tarot, and that's one deck that does that really well. The Tarot of the She is overwhelming for a lot of people. It's just too much, right? It's too much color, and it's overwhelming. It's a deck that takes a little bit of time to walk into. So elements could be represented for sure. Like the Druidcraft Tarot is an amazing deck, and I think it's a deck that would grow with you as you grew with your tarot practice. I love this. I love the saturated colors. I love the strength of the people. I love the animal connections, the connection to nature. This deck gets you thinking about things in a completely different way. And, if you can't read the titles on the cards, that's fine. You can just look at the pictures. You don't have to say the names on the bottoms of some of them that are in Gaelic. So that would be my second suggestion, is to really feel, you want to feel a deck. And this might not be it for you, but there's a couple of cards in the Druidcraft that I just like. This Queen of Pentacles. There's something really special about this one. I love that she's drumming, and I see that she made her drum like I made my drum. So that's one. So your first deck, a diverse deck, a deck that's connected to the elements. Might be good to have a queer deck, you know, and this one, the one that I mentioned, is diverse in the LGBTQ plus as well. So this one is diverse in a lot of different ways. I don't know. Do you need anything else? I think everything else is really a bonus. It really, really is. You might want to think about a deck that you feel comfortable reading with guys, that feels like a guy's deck. And sometimes I pull out the Fountain Tarot for that. I feel its coolness works really well, but also it has some really interesting layers. Like if you were reading for, do you know, I'll tell you, the hardest reading I ever did was it was a gift. And a wife had bought a gift for her husband, and I think it was for his like 85th birthday or something. And so this really sweet man, he was so young looking, he came in for his reading, and I knew he was coming in, and I was packing my bag, and I had no idea what deck I was going to choose to read. Well, first of all, I didn't know what his energy was like. And that was the hardest thing to do, was to pull a deck that might work with him. Yeah. And I believe I might have used this one. I can't remember. I might have used the Textured Tarot. Yeah. This is a really good deck. Very good deck. Hate the cards talk. Love the deck. Yeah. And this one doesn't go too far either. This is an amazing deck for different reasons. So Sunny, that's a hard question. That's a hard question. And I would be as discriminating as possible. You know, try not to get on the bandwagon of the chaos of buying all of that. Yes, I have thought about buying True Black. Yes, that's definitely a beautiful, beautiful deck. You're a poly. So does that mean, Shanti, that you have polyarthrite? I need to look that up. I don't even know what that means. Polyarthrite. Maybe you can tell me. I was going to guess what it means, but I was going to guess that it means several different variations of arthritis. Is that what it means? I'm sorry. Ooh, Red PR has a good question too. I want to respond to Shanti Deva. Shanti Deva, you know what I would suggest? Well, take my tarot classes, Shanti Deva. Not my tarot classes, my yoga classes. Awan Muktasana. So this particular yoga series, which comes from the Satyananda tradition, is actually its subtitle is anti-rheumatic. It's called an anti-rheumatic yoga practice. And it's really great for the joints, for all the joints. And so, yeah, so I teach it. So you can book in with me. Oh, that's just, yeah. It does make it challenging to sleep. I'm sorry to hear that, Shanti. But have a look. Have a look at that. Like Google Pawanmuktasana series, and there's free videos out there, and it might be something that actually could shift some things for you. Okay. Here's the question I wanted to address. Someone who has purchased quite a few decks and hasn't really connected with any. Red PR. Oh, that's a brutal, brutal experience. Well, stop buying decks. What I would suggest is that you choose the one that feels the closest. And so you choose the one that might have a hope of you connecting with. And then you really take some time to get to know it. I did a video. It was called 10 Ways to Connect with the Wild Unknown Tarot. And in that particular video, you could use everything that I said to, are there any mods here? Could you link that video in the chat? I don't know. Wasn't too long ago. It's called 10 Ways to Connect with the Wild Unknown Tarot. And you could use those principles to start to connect with one of the decks that you haven't been able to connect with. And it's about looking at a deck from different eyes and from a different angle, because sometimes we just haven't seen the possibility of the deck. And so my advice is to not give up on it, because you probably don't need to buy another deck. You probably just need some guidance to look at a deck that you already have from a different perspective or with a different style of studying it. Okay, so there was a question about inner child. Oh, Shanti. Okay, I will. Well, that's good. So look up that series. It's a Satyananda, in the Satyananda tradition, Pawanmuktasana. And there's actually, you could just get there's a little book you could get as well too, but there's quite a few videos by Indian people. And I've done a few videos on select aspects of that practice as well too. And we could just do a private and I could go over it with you. Inner child work. Okay. So it's a really good question. Any decks that you feel dreamy, that you feel connected to the dream world. And the reason I say that is because in my experience, the best way to meet the inner child is to have a conversation with the inner child in liminal space. And so if you have a deck that feels dreamy, that can really, really work for you. The other way is through a fairy tale tarot, and that can really help because there's a beauty in fairy tale to do that. And I recently purchased their large cards. I believe it was Candy Soul and Soils deck that I saw her share it in her rainbow video. So I'm really, really interested in these cards. I believe it's called Inner Child Tarot. So that's one for sure. The Fairy Tale Tarot would work. I wouldn't recommend the Alice Tarot, but a deck that you feel if there was a story that you connected with as a child and there was a tarot that had the energy of that story, that's kind of the way that I would go. You can definitely work with archetype cards and archetype decks that is another way in to that, to heal the wound of the inner child. The other way is through shamanic work. And I'll just speak to this very, very briefly because I've already been on almost an hour and a half. And I respect there's different styles of shamanism. But there is a teaching through the direction of the south, which is connected to the energy of the serpent and the whole aspect of shedding skin and stepping out of one's story, and almost like a rebirthing experience. And a lot of the shamanic decks help to work through that. And there's tremendous healing power in the medicine of shamanism. And so if there is a shamanic deck or a shamanic tarot and a shamanic oracle, that's another way to work with that. So I'd be happy to expand on that at another time. Okay. So bye, Claire. Alrighty. If I haven't answered your question, I'm sorry. I've been rambling on for a long time tonight, and I'm going to sign off. It's been wonderful, wonderful being here with you all. And make sure you get your name in the draw. The link is in the description box below. If you missed that intel, I am giving away 2 tarot decks as well as a Wheel of the Year reading. And I will be drawing those on Saturday during my live readings on Samhain. Yeah. So I don't think I'm going to be on before then. And so I look forward to seeing some of you in a couple of days. Halloween. Wow. Can't believe where this year is going. So stay well, everybody. Namaste. And thank you so much for being here tonight.